Okay, witches, and welcome to the Moonstone Witchery channel, where we talk about all things witchcraft and spirituality in a modern context. I'm Rand Lockard, and I am the founder and head witch here at Moonstone Witchery. You can find me over on Instagram at moonstone_witchery or on Facebook in my super awesome Facebook group. This question gets asked a lot in the Facebook group, which is also called Moonstone Witchery. And so I thought I'd make a video elaborating on this question. So a lot of times people are showing up in our posts over there asking what kind of witch am I? And at first me and the other moderators were kind of like, you're whatever kind of witch you are. But we're realizing, and something I've always known and understood, is that one of the biggest challenges with spirituality and walking your spiritual path is quite honestly just giving yourself permission. Giving yourself permission to know yourself deeply enough to access these different layers or arenas or areas that you feel called to. Knowing yourself deeply enough to follow that kind of inner calling that you have inside. See, if you're like interested in witch work, or you're studying witchcraft, or you're following up and learning more about this kind of stuff, you're already doing a good job. So I just want to like pause and like give you kudos, because you're already doing a good job with this, because you're already understanding and following your intuitive center enough to know that there is something calling you, that there is something moving you forward, that there is something kind of asking you to pursue it, or to dive into it, or to explore it with greater depths. So you're already taking those steps. But as with all things, when we step out of a comfort zone, right, and we start to create a new comfort zone for ourselves, it can get a little challenging. We want to know that we're doing it right. We want to know that we are coming to the right conclusions, that it's not for nothing, that it's all kind of worth it, right? And so for many of us, or for many of you watching this, claiming that title of witch was your first kind of revolutionary action. It was your first step in being like, yes, this is me. This is a word that applies to me. You know, I always tell this story about how I once gave a talk at a spiritual community about witchcraft, and oh my God, the room was packed full of people, and I did a breakaway group at the end, and this woman stayed and she sat in on the breakaway group. And she said to me, why are you insisting on using this word? And I was like, which word are we talking about? Because if you've ever seen me speak, it's a whole experience, and I do not monitor my language. And so she said, why do you insist on using this word? And I said, well, which word? And she said, the word witch. Why can't you just say you're a light worker? Or why can't you say that you're like an energy healer? Or why can't you lean harder into like psychic medium, because that's so much more approachable? And don't you want to be approachable? And I said to her, that is specifically why I am using the word witch, because in your mind, you have a certain definition of what that word means, and it doesn't match who I have shown myself to be to you today. And so I am trying to show people like you that the word witch can pertain to somebody like me. Because my talk that day was all about positive energy and how to elevate the energy, and how to like call others forth into your own energy rather than you joining other people's energy, right? And it was a very uplifting and positive kind of message in the witchcraft talk that I was giving. And she was very like kind of confused by this. I used the word witch intentionally. I used the word witch because it's part of my personal goal to start to transform what that word means to most people, because witches have a bad rap. And as you know, if you've listened to any of my podcasts, and I ramble on and on about this, it's intentional that witches have a bad rap. But we're going to go ahead and change that, right? So for those of you who have already claimed the word witch, you've already done the first hard thing, which is take on an identity that aligns with a word that is often difficult for people to process and digest. So kudos to you. Now, the next step is, I think, that people are looking for ways to practice, or how to allow themselves to practice. And like I said a moment ago, they're wanting to know they're doing it right. They're wanting to know the pathway. They're wanting to know, like, how do I take these steps? What am I supposed to do? Am I doing the thing the right way? So obviously, first I'm going to say there is no right way for you to be a witch. See, your inner calling is your inner calling. It's speaking from you, and it's moving your body through the world. So we really discern what kind of anything we are in this life by following our joy or following our inner drive or following the things that are like whispering in our ear and kind of nudging us gently forward. That's how we do it. That's how we're going to do it with witchcraft too. However, because I know people like lists and they like categories and they like labels, but I'm going to say this with the caveat that I always do. Labels are helpful until they're not. Okay, so like when I was coming out, the label gay or whatever it is, that was a helpful label for me to find my community, right? That label helped me figure out where I belonged. Now it becomes helpful in that capacity so I can find the people who are like me. It becomes not helpful when it becomes limiting, right? When there's gatekeeping that starts to happen, when there's people who make hard rules about these labels, especially when people are making hard rules about the labels that they don't even carry themselves. That's an interesting one. And so like in the LGBT community, for example, there can be some people who are kind of gatekeepy about like including people who maybe came out later in life and have a long history of being with men, or including people who are bisexual or pansexual or whatever the case may be. They start to become gatekeepy and be like, well, you can be this, but not if you do that. I don't really like that. So go ahead and use these labels as much as they suit you, but don't use them if they start to limit you. Because if you are feeling limited, that means that you are ignoring or pushing down something that is trying to rise up and come out within you. And we don't need to do that. We are on a journey to kind of free all the parts of us that want to be freed, right? That want to exist in reality through the creature called us. So here's some type of witches that I found. I actually like researched a little bit for this. So we've got several different kinds of witches. I'm going to read them and I will label them and describe them to you, and maybe you'll find a category that speaks to you, and then you can start to dive in by researching through that, okay? So there's kitchen witches, which is kind of one of the most popular ones. A kitchen witch is actually kind of one of the distilled essences of all witchcraft. I would like to say that I think we're all kind of kitchen witches in one way or another, because what a kitchen witch does is, yes, a kitchen witch is in their kitchen, right? Like a kitchen witch could maybe be simmering or stirring or creating their spell work through the production of food or drinks or products like that that are in their kitchen. Yes, you can infuse all of your meals with spells or blessings. Yes, you maybe should be doing that. Yes, you can create like a lovely spell in a pot and let the aromatics kind of cast themselves throughout your home. But a kitchen witch is also pertaining to the ease of use of the objects. So, for example, a kitchen witch is not going to need to go out and buy a bunch of fancy products or items or specifically spiritual items to create their spell work. A kitchen witch is going to use what is in their kitchen, right? And so a kitchen witch is someone who's resourceful. They're able to understand the energy of items and kind of morph them or shift them to meet their needs. A green witch is a witch that really works with plants and plant essence, plant energy, plant spirit, and all the plant like energy that there is so that you can get when you are working with plant magic. A green witch is going to have a house full of plants. They're going to have gardens. They're going to have a lot of greenery around them, and they're going to incorporate that living essence, that life force energy that's innate in the plants into their spell work. They're going to utilize their plants for cleansing and all of that kind of good stuff. They're going to activate their plants to emanate good energy into their spell work. They might even turn their plants into the targets of their spells and infuse their energy that way by tending carefully to the plant. If you want more information on this, please check my channel. I have a whole video on plant magic. A fire witch is a witch that works with fire. She's someone who really likes candle magic. They are someone who really maybe likes bonfires. They're someone who works with the elemental fire energy in order to create that big, bold burst of energy, that big, bold burst of spell work. They incorporate fire into almost all of their rituals, spells, and practices. A sea witch is someone who I can imagine does the same thing as fire, but with the sea. So I'd almost like to add like sea witch / water witch. You know, I feel like each witch can kind of do elemental things, or you can break them down into the elements. A sea witch is going to really honor the ocean goddess, whichever name she chooses to honor that goddess through. A sea witch is going to incorporate crystals and sand and that saltiness of the water and the air, and they're going to kind of draw off of the big, bold energy of the sea, but they're also going to have awareness that the sea has tides that change and currents that flow and all of those things, and they're going to use that energy with their spell work, not work against that energy with their spell work, okay? A storm witch, similarly, a storm witch will go outside during a storm or before a storm and kind of charge herself in the energy of the storm. Now, if you are charging yourself with a storm's energy, what you're going to do is you're going to stand barefoot in the grass, and you're going to kind of allow or summon that energy from above into you, from below up through you, from above down through you. Now, you do have to be careful because it is a storm. And presumably, if there is lightning or something, please use caution and intelligence when doing anything with witch work. If you're a fire witch, have fire safety. If you're a storm witch, have storm safety. I also want to say with this that you can be multiple witches at once. We contain multitudes, okay? So you don't have to be like, what's my one category? And have to stick to that category. And see also the label rant that I went on a few minutes ago. You can be in multiple categories all at once, okay? A crystal witch is a witch that works with crystals. See how these are pretty obvious? But a crystal witch is going to like understand the essence of crystals. She's going to be able to hold a crystal in her hand and kind of communicate with it, receive communication from it, receive energy from it, receive information. And she's going to absorb that information from the crystal, but she's also going to communicate that information to the crystal. And side note, I apologize for using predominantly female pronouns. I am working on it. A crystal witch is also going to kind of activate the crystals around themselves in order to have the crystals infusing their space with that energy, infusing the practitioner, the witch themselves with that energy. See, when we're wearing our crystals, what we are doing is we are saying, hey, you represent the energy of prosperity and of balanced emotions and of good luck. This is adventuring. And so because you are working with bringing harmony to my heart spaces and you're bringing positive, abundant energy to me, I'm going to ask that you work with my energy field in this way, and I'm just going to tuck you in and wear you, and you're going to be with me, influencing my energy field so that I can influence the energy field around me. So in this way, the crystal is the spell that is being cast upon the practitioner, the witch, and the witch is the spell that is casting that energy around anyone whom they interact with. Okay? And then a crystal witch is going to use their crystals as if they are little mini spells all over the place in that capacity. A cosmos witch or like a universe witch is going to be someone who understands the astrology and is monitoring and paying attention to the charts of the moon and planetary phases. And they're going to work with the planetary phases to help them direct their spell work, their ritual work, and all of the stuff that they're casting. So that kind of witch is using space and astrology and the stars to do their witch work. Hereditary witch. Okay, so this is the tea with hereditary witchcraft. This can get a little gross, a little fast, because this gets very like, even though Harry Potter is canceled because of the turfhood of the author, she who shall not be named at this point, Harry Potter's canceled, but they did a good job of talking about one thing. The whole situation with the muggles and how it gets gross when there's like pure blood wizards and like muggle people. And then there's like half-blooded with practitioner wizards or whatever in this universe that she who shall not be named created. Okay, and so this gets gross a little bit at times. I have the biggest problem with this subcategory of witches because there are people out here who are like, I'm an 8th generation hereditary witch. And it's like, okay, cool, but have you devoted the time and the inner work to up-leveling your practice? Have you devoted the conscientious effort to becoming the best practitioner, the best version of yourself that you can be? Because quite honestly, as with all things that are hereditary, actually a lot of times it ends up hindering us a little bit. Because if we are hereditary, we think, oh, I don't have to do the work. Oh, I don't have to do this. Or, oh, I'm more advanced. We have this entitlement about ourselves when we have something hereditary. We have this like, arrogance maybe about ourselves. And I would say that being a hereditary witch just made your home life a little easier when it came time for you to embrace this part of yourselves, but all the work is still there. Um, and a side note with that, so many of us are hereditary witches. It is an immense point of privilege to know your ancestry. Like, it is an immense point of privilege to know your ancestry because that information has been literally robbed of so many people who populate this country, and I'm in the United States, that it's bananas. So, do you see why it's like, oh, isn't that nice for you, right? Because knowing our ancestry is a privilege that has been taken from so many people due to slavery or being on stolen land or poverty or classism or generalized judgment of shunning family members who didn't fit our criteria. There's a lot of privilege in knowing you're a hereditary witch because it also means that you can trace back for how long you've been safe to be practicing as a witch. So I just want you to have some perspective. Am I happy for you if you're a hereditary witch? Yes. Do you have access to information that's been sort of passed down? You totally do, and that is helpful and wonderful of you to share with others. But does it somehow make you automatically more connected or better than non-hereditary witches? It does not do that at all. Okay. An elemental witch is a witch who's going to be using all of the elements to do their witch work. Right? They're going to make sure that they incorporate the 5 predominant elements, although each elemental witch might have additional elements that they work with, but the 5 predominant elements that can be seen and recognized on the pentacle is or are earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. Spirit. I've seen some elemental witches use storm energy as one of the elements as well, like electricity. So that's cool too, whatever speaks to you with that. But in all of their spell work, they're going to be the kind of witch who opens the circle and honors the 4 corners and honors spirit before proceeding. A cultural witch refers to witchcraft that is imbued in our culture, that we are brought up with. Santeria is a version of a cultural witch. Voodoo and hoodoo practitioners are cultural witches as well. There's a whole host of cultural witches out there depending on where you come from and what you've been taught. I would argue, and I'm going to get some hell for this, but literally, but I would argue that certain sects of Catholicism are actually cultural witchcraft. It's just about like the way in which we live our day-to-day lives. You know, if you are in the habit of lighting a saint's candle in your home and giving an offering to a saint so that they bring you certain kinds of energy, I think you're practicing witchcraft, but I don't know for sure, but I do. Cultural witches are generally practicing within a pantheon or a practitioner style that has been passed down to them for generations. Oftentimes, cultural witchcraft is closed. And by that, I mean not everybody can access it. A lot of native practices are cultural and they are closed, and I wouldn't call them witchcraft because that is not the word that they use for their practice necessarily. And so when you're encountering a cultural witch, you must have respect because it is what is part of their practice. We have to respect all witches, okay? But specifically, we must respect the practices of witchcraft that are religious in nature, not just open and spiritual. See, there's a whole world of just open spiritual witchcraft. And then there's a whole world of more religiously aligned witchcraft. And as with all religions, you don't get to just show up and do the thing without being a part of it, right? And so we must respect the other cultures and how they practice. I saw that there's a dream witch on a list that I encountered. I'm not really sure what this means, unless this is someone who really does a lot of work around astral travel and lucid dreaming, or perhaps they tend to do most of their spell work in a meditative sort of transient sort of state. That's my closest guess as to what a dream witch could be. And then there's gray witchcraft. I actually can't read my writing on that one. Oh, I can. Okay, so I have two, maybe three more. A gray witch is a witch that is neither, so I guess let's break this one down into three categories. And I'm going to give you a big little disclaimer on this part. I do not like the terms black and white witches, and that is because there is a linguistic kind of subversive problem to the way that our culture vilifies black things and dark things, and the way that our culture honors and uplifts white things and light things. So there's some undertones of racial bias and bullshit in there. Yeah, I understand that we're not having that conversation, but I feel like it's my job, or it's important for me to point these things out to you so that you can point these things out to yourselves and to other people in your spheres and spaces, okay? But a gray witch is a witch who does not just do love and light only work, but she's also not doing just baneful or justice-seeking magic. If you want more information on left-handed, baneful / justice-seeking dark magic, tune in for another video that I'm going to make today, all about the ethics and moralities around hexing, cursing, and all of that stuff. But a gray witch is combining elements from both the light and the dark. A gray witch is living in the gray. They are willing to hex or restrain or restrict or seek justice through their magic at times, and they are willing to bless and uplift and heal and serve in that way at other times. They don't have a steadfast approach. They don't just do one or the other. They are in the gray zone, and they are realizing that they want to take in all of the different forms and sort of determine for themselves what it is that they want to do and what it is that they don't want to do. Along with that, we have solitary and eclectic witches. A solitary witch is a witch that is practicing alone without a coven. Covens are kind of very specific, in my opinion, to Wicca. And so to a degree, having a coven is a kind of a Wiccan-based thing, but it doesn't have to be. Groups of witches can come together and create a coven in which they determine how they like to practice as a collective. Typically, a coven is a collective of witches who are practicing either in the same capacity as each other, meaning they execute their magic in similar ways, or they're practicing to do certain collective things that they have community agreed upon together. So they're casting community spells, meaning multitudes of them, more than one practitioner is contributing their energy to the spell that they are casting. Covens tend to be formed of people who are sort of in alignment. That's not to say that you can't be in a coven and be solitary, because a lot of times people are calling little group gatherings covens anyway. And so in this way, the word's kind of been co-opted and is beginning to sort of transform to take on its own meaning, which is just a collection of spiritual women coming together to discuss spirituality. It's not really truly a coven, but that's where the word is kind of going in our culture right now. So a solitary witch is a witch that's sort of practicing on their own. Some of us are solitary witches on purpose. Some of us are solitary witches because we don't know any other witches. Some of us are solitary witches in real tangible reality, but we have a group online or something like that. There's really no one way that it has to go. We are just making this witchcraft thing work in the reality that we are currently living in. And so solitary. Now, eclectic witches, I guess I'm saving the best for last. I don't know. Maybe it's not the best. I really don't think there's any kind of value assessment here, but most people that I've encountered kind of consider themselves to fall into this category, which is an eclectic witch. An eclectic witch is someone who's okay, I have researched a lot of different options, and I am going to pick and choose what things work for me or resonate with me. Okay, so about eclectic witchcraft. The traditional witches or the hereditary witches have a tendency to kind of nitpick at this because they've had it drilled into them. There's one right or wrong way to do something, and if you're doing whatever you want, it doesn't count. This is one of the drawbacks to having been taught a specific way. It's that it can get kind of limiting. One of the reasons that older generations always get kind of made fun of because they aren't expansive and can't really learn new things like technology and stuff, it's because they've been taught there's one way to do something. This is how we do a thing. And so breaking that mold is a little bit challenging when that's what we've always been told. But then newer generations come through and they're like, guess what? Actually, you don't have to do it that way. There's lots of things that you can do. But it's kind of like difficult. And so an eclectic witch has given themselves permission to do what works for them. I identify as an eclectic witch, and therefore, I guess that's why I had a bias in my little like, yay. But it's because like I have radically given myself permission to follow that inner calling that I was talking about earlier, and to let myself sort of embrace whichever part of witch work is speaking to me, and to allow myself to just access whatever it might be. So these are your witchcraft categories as far as I could determine. If you think of another one, or if you have any questions for me about any of this, please go ahead and leave me a comment below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please think about sharing my channel with others. I would greatly appreciate it. I hope you have a blessed day.